Hello and welcome to the 31st and final 2020 NHL Draft recap here at Scouching. Today we're looking at the Washington Capitals, last but not least. And the Washington Capitals are a team that wasn't super busy on draft day, but I thought overall found an interesting group of players to come away with. Leading the way, they took the biggest swing, I would say, of the entire draft on Henri Lapierre. When Henri Lapierre is really going, he, to me, was a guy that would have been in my top 15 of this year's draft and maybe even the top 10, but certainly no further back than 15. He's a crafty offensive player with great skill and really good creativity in the offensive zone, with a good enough shot to score some goals on top of everything else. But he was hampered by injury after injury after injury this year and just never really seemed to get his feet set. The games that I tracked of him were underwhelming at best, but I definitely feel like he was a player that when I watched him, if I was told that he was playing through injuries that were really messing with even the level of ability for him to even think the game as it happens, I would believe you. He was showing a lack of defensive involvement, a really low top speed, and a low level of skill that I had not seen out of him up until the Holinka, and I really felt that Lapierre had a lot more in his tank, but it really felt like he was being held back by something that he couldn't really help. So if the Washington Capitals had the 22nd overall pick and just wanted a guy that could potentially be one of the steals of the draft, Lapierre's a great pick, especially considering their next pick didn't come up until 117th. He seems to be healthy and he's already hit the ground running in the QMJHL this season, so things are looking optimistic right now. I'm optimistic and I never want to see a 17 or 18-year-old's hockey career be hampered by injuries, so hopefully Lapierre turns into the player that we all saw leading up into the QMJHL season this year, because to me he was truly spectacular in the Holinka tournament this season. So I really like the potential of this pick, and it's about as big a swing as you could have taken at 22. At 117th, the Washington Capitals drafted Bogdan Trineyev, and I've seen Trineyev play a little bit. I like his agility and fluid motion on his feet with the combination of skill that he has on top. I only saw a little bit of him and I was going to track him over the course of this season, but other guys just kind of pushed him down my list a little bit. I don't really know what he could become. He's got some interesting tools, maybe a middle six power forward down the road, and at 117, he's a fine swing to take, but he wouldn't have been on my list in that range. I can't really say anything overwhelmingly negative because there are some positive aspects to his game that I did really like, but I always kind of came away a little bit more impressed with the potential of a player like Dmitry Zlotiev. I think it's more likely Trineyev plays NHL hockey one day, but I like Zlotiev's ceiling a little bit more than Trineyev right now. Not the worst pick ever, perfectly reasonable in this range, just maybe not the guy that I would have had my eyes on at this point. At 148, they drafted Bear Hughes, which is one of the best names to go off the board in this year's draft, and Bear Hughes is another one of these really optimistic stories that you just want to cheer for. He's a guy who did not play any sort of high-level hockey until this season in the WHL. Last year, he played in whatever the KIJHL is for the Spokane Braves, so to go from the Braves to the Chiefs this year and earn himself a draft pick is really impressive. His name was brought up to me over the course of the season, so whenever I went and checked him out, I never came away thinking he was much of a needle mover, but just based on the trajectory of his career to this point, he's worth a pick somewhere, so the Washington Capitals picking him and looking at the work ethic that he clearly has put in his career so far must mean that they see something positive in his future, and frankly, I don't disagree. It is an amazing trajectory that he's been on over the last couple of seasons that is inspirational to pretty much any kid out there. So I am hopeful for Bear Hughes at the 138th pick overall, and even if he wasn't a guy that I would have looked at in this range, if I had scouts nudging me, telling me to take this kid in this range because of what he's done in his career to this point, I'm not going to be too upset about it. He's an interesting player. I just never saw anything that moved the needle for me. But at this range, you can draft him and say, look, you were playing basically house league hockey 2 seasons ago. So whatever happens with you over the next couple of seasons in the WHL or the ECHL or the AHL, it's fine. Just keep doing what you're doing because so far it seems to be working on some level. At 179th, the Washington Capitals drafted Bjorkland from the Medicine Hat Tigers, who is a goaltender. And I hope by now you know exactly what happens when goaltenders come up, especially ones that I haven't seen a ton of, or ones that haven't driven great results so far. I don't know, he's a goalie. You wait and see. He's a few years away from being a few years away, probably. He hasn't had any measurable success at most levels he's played with, comparable to some other goalies that have been drafted, but he hasn't been overwhelmingly terrible. and Medicine Hat is a team that didn't do a whole lot in front of him and let him face a lot of shots in any given game. Then at 211th, the Washington Capitals drafted a player that was really highly ranked on my list that fell almost completely off the draft board in Oscar Magnusson. Now, I've seen Magnusson play quite a bit, and I really like his skill. He's a player who is very much focused on the offensive side of the game, and he is really slight on his already slight frame, which might lead to why his defensive numbers were not so great. He's a player who I think has a lot of skill and agility, but maybe not enough to put it all together, at least not right now. And I think a lot of these factors led to what dropped them down the list. I had plenty of chances to add him to my own team scouting list, but I chose not to because I just question how likely it is that he'll put it all together to become an NHL player. But at 211, this is a great swing to take. He does have undeniable skill, he does have undeniable offensive ability, and he is already playing against men in the SHL to mixed results, but he's still very young. So I'm optimistic about this pick at 211. There were worse players that went off the board far before he did, but rest assured, I really like this pick for the Washington Capitals. So that is it for the 2020 NHL Draft Recap Series here at Scouching. Thank you so much for watching, whether you watched one or all 31 of these. I really appreciate it. It's the culmination of the entire year's work, and I'm really glad to be able to bring it to you. So that is it. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, you can click all the buttons you see below me so you never miss another one. If you really liked it, you could subscribe on Patreon or here on YouTube by clicking join below. You'll get access to a Discord server, early access to videos, data sheets for hundreds of drafted and undrafted prospects across all 31 teams, and plenty of other goodies you can check out. Or you can pick up some merchandise from the Scouchwear shop, where 50% of profits go to the Women's Sports Foundation. So that is it. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for when live streams on this channel boot up in the coming weeks.